All right, everyone. Just want to come on here real quick and do a video. I know Dad said something Sunday about we had a conversation with Mary Fran Saturday night, and so we just kind of want to go over some of the things that she said to us because she called us and she said, "Are you guys kind of picking up in the spirit what I'm picking up?" So we talked and kind of saw that we were on the same page. Everybody knows that Russia invaded Ukraine. And right now, with this war that's going on, there's a lot of political tension. And she said that in the week ago, she was in a church, I think, in either Birmingham, Alabama, and she began to prophesy before the war started. Now, if you were at our church in January, Mary Fran said kings go to war in the spring, and she talked about it. She prophesied it right here in our church. Now, because of her ministry and what she says, we can't release anything, but if you were in the services, you heard her talking about this, and you heard her say something about the next 6 months. And so she called us, and she gave us a little bit of an update of what the Lord showed her and what she was prophesying in Birmingham. And she began to share with us because she said, it's going to sound negative for a minute, but really it comes back really positive. But she said to prepare the people. And so she told me the first thing was, she said, a year ago I prophesied that Russia would invade the Ukraine. And so that's on tape as well. So if you know her ministry, she's very prophetic. Follow her Facebook. They do post things sometimes of her talking about, different countries. But a couple of things I just wanted to share with you. She said that there's going to be a major financial shift a week or two ago. Now, she reminded me of this on the phone, that it's going to be international driven. So you really need to pray about with your finances what to do. I know some people in our church have decided to pull everything out. That's really up to you and what the Lord is telling you. You have to follow your spirit on that. I don't know exactly what that means, but I know for me, one thing that we're doing is the church this last year got out of debt. I'm getting out of debt completely, just getting rid of all that. I don't want to have any financial pressure in the days ahead of what's going on. Plus, it's biblical for not to be servant to the lender. So, she also said the next 30 days, I'm going to go over that, they're going to be the toughest. Now, she said from this last Sunday, the next 30 days, you're going to see the most of what we're going to be in for a ride for the next 30 days, and then all the way to June. And then I said, well, what's happening after June? She said, it'll shift. I said, worse, bad? She just said, it'll shift. So kind of like with COVID, everything was on COVID. Now it's on Russia. Everybody kind of forgot about what's going on with COVID since the war started. Funny how that works, right? So she said that also the tempo of everything changed as well, to where the next 30 days you're going to see, she said there's two hands of God, the visible hand of God and the invisible hand of God. And one of the kind of analogy she used was with Esther. God's name was never mentioned in the book, but you saw the invisible hand of God working through Esther to completely change a nation for the better, but through her. So that was what she was talking about, the invisible hand of God. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute. And so she said, really, we stepped into a time where the tempo of the impossible is going to start becoming possible. You're going to start seeing the invisible hand of God moving. And it's like the time where she said you're waiting for the manifestations, or you're standing on the promise of God, and you're kind of to see those manifestations come to pass. She said it's like that, but look for the invisible hand of God working through all this. And that's what I would be praying for. But we'll get to that in a second. So the next thing she told me was, she said, don't look at the political leaders, follow God's way of doing things. He does not change. And so kind of like how in the Old Testament, where the kings were in their King Ahab, but really the precedent was on Elijah. So what she's saying is watch the prophets, watch the men of God and what they're saying right now. God has an order of the way he does things. It's not always the news. I mean, the news is, who knows half the time what's even true or not. So in the Bible, most of the time, the precedent was on the men of God, the prophets. They were leading the way, saying what was going to happen. The kings were in there, but they weren't front and center. They were kind of backseat, almost as most of them came to the prophets for advice, for what to do next. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot of big shift, or a lot of big, we're going to see a huge shift in that, where they're going to start coming back to the men of God and asking for advice and different things like that, where it's not so centered on the political realm. And so the other thing was, she said for the next 30 days, keep your fellowship, your prayer time is crucial. I talked about the two hands of God. She's going to say you're going to see the invisible, the manifestations. And she said he's trusting you to trust him. And that was one thing that I remember that stood out to her on the phone that she said to me. And so I believe we're going to start seeing that back to the kind of the political order versus biblical order. She said in the Bible, in Bible times, Judah always went first. The worshipers always went first to war. Then Issachar, the men of Issachar, goes second, which is the people who interpreted the times. And then the tribe of Ephraim was third, which was finances, and they would advise the king to count the cost of going to war. So those are three things to be looking out for. But she said right now, one of the next things was that every person's prayer was important and that everybody is prophetic right now in what they're saying and what they're praying, and God needs each person's voice and each person's prayers to be praying over the world, over these situations, over the lost, over the kingdom of God and what is happening right now. And just be very careful of just loosely saying things. I've been asking the Lord how to pray, whether to be exposing certain situations or exposing who's behind a lot of this. I know a lot of things are coming soon. You know, even Charles Schwab was on the other day on the World Economic Forum, and Dad says anytime he gets up and he says something, it's going to happen. He's talking about a blackout. So I think people need to be prepared right now. How you get prepared, that's really up to you. I know, biggest thing we did at the church was pay all the debt off. We're talking about getting solar panels to get off the grid in case of a blackout. Just we have electricity and water. I've been talking to different local farmers and trying to get, the church has got some food boxes. We're learning to grow food. It's not to panic, but it's more like it's just wise in the days ahead to not rely on, the government and grocery stores, because if you look right now in Ukraine with the war that's going on, grocery stores are all empty. So I think it's just wise to be prepared. I wouldn't say go into debt buying a whole bunch of stuff, but I think that when you have the extra money, getting a few extra cans of maybe beans, rice, peanut butter, some things you can kind of stash away in case things got kind of rough for a little while. I mean, kind of saw that with toilet paper. But I think food, just kind of the necessity items, electricity, water, those are some things that we're doing. I'm not freaking out about it, but I am kind of strongly moving on it just to get us in a safe position to take care of people. And if things kind of fall apart in a week from now, well, then I'm just not ready, but you're going to trust God. I think that, she said that there's possibility for a nuclear fallout, but she didn't really say how that was going to happen and whether or not that would really happen. But I just asked her, I said, is it possible for a nuclear bomb to go off? She said it's possible. So then we saw that, she told me that about a week ago. Then you saw Putin kind of push for that. So I really would be just praying right now. She said another thing, that China's going to go to Europe. I don't know what that means and when. I believe that she's talking about China will invade Europe. I don't remember if she told me on the phone that China will take Europe. It's a possibility that China will take Europe. But I know that for a fact she said China will go to Europe. The other thing that she said about China was that she used the word the U.S. will have to assimilate or be annihilated. And I asked her, I said, what's that in regards to? She said, China's regards to the U.S. or remarks to the U.S. in the days ahead will be to assimilate or to be annihilated. So I don't totally know what that means. It just needs to be prayed over. I think China's going to say either the U.S. you're with us or you're not. It's going to be very interesting. The U.S. is in a lot of debt towards China. It's almost like we're owned by China at this point. I think we are. So be praying over that as well. Another thing she was saying was that Putin wants to be like the Lord of Lords, and she wants to be king. Now, she said she is not interested. This is the guy over China. He's not interested in destroying the entire world. He's more interested in being like the emperor and being in control and being the king. She said she owns Putin. So, I think that whether, if Russia does invade Ukraine, it obviously is going to give them, it's going to be closer for Ukraine or for Russia to be able to shoot rockets towards Europe. Ukraine has a huge oil supply. They got an oil pipeline that runs through it. No matter what side you believe on the war of what Ukraine's done with their political system, maybe the Bidens and Clintons and everybody's involved with, they made money off Ukraine. Even George Soros was posting stuff, which was crazy to me. But they may be all involved with it. But at the same time, Russia's a communist country, and if they take Ukraine, they're just one step closer to taking Europe. And so I think that's kind of the whole goal. I think, my opinion, Putin's trying to put the Soviet Union back together. It's been in the news. It's been talked about. I think he's trying to earn the respect of putting his country back. And, he's blaming, kind of like what Hitler did before Hitler invaded Poland. And that's usually what it started. It starts with the side country, is how they did in World War II. They invaded Poland, but Hitler blamed the Jews for their financial crisis and different things like that. So she said China's after really just, power and to be in control, but they're not really interested in destroying everything. So I think China, got to keep your eyes on China. She said they're going to go into Europe. I don't know when that'll happen. So I think that... she said, she said, celebrate the hidden hand of God. And she said, celebrate that. So this is where it gets positive. Celebrate the feast, watching the Jewish feast. She said, when you celebrate the feast, it's an act of aligning with him and his purposes. And I think that God put us here at a time. And so it's not like God just said, hey, you guys, oops, there's war, you guys are on your own, don't starve. I don't really believe that. I really believe that when God, created you, he had you in mind. There was a time that he knew you were going to be here, that all this was going to happen. I mean, it's not throwing God by surprise, and I believe that there's a way out. I believe there's a way for the church will be protected, and I believe that there's going to be provision and a way for the church to, win the loss in this moment. So I think that's something positive, and really just keep celebrating the hidden hand of God. Celebrate the feast when he's doing things, and just stay in prayer, and stay in prayer about everything, where you're going. She said, I think it was last year, a few months ago, you just have to know when you're supposed to go somewhere now and travel and different things. And so I just think that's a good word of advice. You can go back. I think I've covered everything that she said. I think we're going to start seeing a lot of the invisibles, what she was saying about the tempo changing. I really think we're going to start seeing a lot of the behind the scenes of God moving, which is, I'm just going to keep rejoicing and celebrating. The book of Revelation talks about China. It talks about the great dragon. It talks about Russia, the bear. It talks about the Ezekiel 38 war, the nations from the north coming down to Israel. These things are going to happen. And so some things you can change through prayer, some things you can affect through prayer, and some things you can only prepare for through prayer is one thing that she taught me. And so just knowing the difference, praying in the Spirit, praying over people, and just taking the necessary steps of maybe however that looks to you, and making your own decisions with what's happening. You saw the SWIFT bank putting sanctions on Russia, and the ruble is going down. So you're already seeing, usually after something happens, it takes time for that effect to kind of that wave to kick back towards us. I think we're going to see a rise in gas prices and different things. And so I think it's just a time to use a lot of wisdom and prayer, but it's still a time that, the harvest is great and to pull the harvest in, but making sure that your fellowship with God is staying very close because he created you for this time. It's not a time to I believe it's not a time to get back to, we want to get back to the way things were and just going about our daily lives. I think everything's going to change and everything's turning upside down. And, it's really a time to just get into the Word and really just do what God's called you to do, because the Bible says that while it's day, we can work, but when night approaches, no man will work no more. And I think in Romans 13, he said, be about the Father's business quickly. So, because I'm returning quickly. So Jesus is coming back. I'd say make Jesus Lord. If you don't know Jesus, say, Jesus, come in my heart. I make you Lord of my life. And I believe that the body of Christ's best days are ahead. Anyways, that's the update. If I miss anything, Dad will probably come on and say something later, but he's at home right now, so I just wanted to come on and just update because we said we would. So love you guys. Until next time.